Time to pull up a chair. We've got another great story for you today in the rLounge. Some people collect stamps. Some people collect fridge magnets. Hank collects ways to make everyone around him miserable. Today in the rLounge, this isn't just your average my father-in-law is difficult story. Am I the a-hole for exposing my father-in-law as the liar he is and for not allowing him to meet our newborn daughter? Father-in-law, we will call him Hank, is a textbook narcissist. He is never in the wrong, always has to be the victim in any situation he is in, and has been completely enabled by his mother, my husband's grandmother. He is also extremely racist. This is super important. A chauvinist. I'm sure that is a huge surprise, and we have recently found out he is a major pathological liar. My husband, John, and I have been together for almost 18 years. We basically grew up together and have created a beautiful life for ourselves and our little family. At the beginning of our relationship, Hank seemed like a wonderful man, always doting on his children, stepchildren, and wife. John's stepmom, Cora, he would say things like, "I can't wait until you're my daughter." It was sweet, but I wish it had been genuine. 5 years into our relationship, we got married. When planning, Hank's side of the family made it very clear that they were not to sit anywhere close to John's mother, Haley, or her family. Also, Hank's entire side of the family lives out of state. When he and Haley split, Hank packed up and moved 14 hours away to live with Cora. Our wedding was beautiful, but you could definitely feel the tension and hostility coming from Hank's side towards Haley's side. This is where things started to change, and I started to see Hank's true colors. Not long into our marriage, we were pressured about having children from Hank's side of the family. We were struggling with fertility issues and undergoing fertility treatments in secret. While visiting Hank, the topic of, "When are you having kids?" came up yet again. John and I just looked at each other and said our usual, "When the timing is right, it will happen." Hank smirked, then said, "Well, Marie, maybe if you weren't so fat, you would be able to give John the kids he wants." It got super quiet. John actually was diagnosed as sterile, and we were doing everything in our power to try to get some healthy swimmers. After a minute, John, bless his wonderful soul, said, "Marie is perfect. Her weight is not an issue. Not that that is any of all your concern. Stay in your lane, please." Hank muttered something under his breath about his son being brainwashed, but we just let it go. During that same trip, we were having dinner with Hank, Cora, and her 12-year-old daughter, Natty. Natty was a sweet kid. I don't remember exactly what she had said to set Hank off. Honestly, it probably was absolutely nothing, but his response was absolutely disgusting. He looked at Natty and said, "Well, if that is how you're going to act, you won't ever amount to anything. You'll end up getting knocked up in your teens by some derogatory or African-American slur and live off the government." I was absolutely floored and appalled. Remember when I said that his racism is important? I am of mixed races, meaning his grandchildren will also be mixed. I actually stated this, and Hank had the audacity to say, "Well, you look white, so that doesn't count." Fast forward through 7 years of tears, heartbreak, and negative pregnancy tests, I had gone to the hospital with some intense stomach pain. It was there that I found out I was actually 7 weeks along with our now precious son. We could not be more happy. The pregnancy was relatively smooth until my 34-week appointment. My blood pressure was sky high, and I was told that I was pre-eclamptic. I was then admitted, and they started inducing immediately. I labored for 46 horrific hours. At one point, around the 32-hour mark, John left to pick up his sister from the airport and to also check on our fur babies. I had put on some intense pain meds that knocked me out because my epidural had continued to fail repeatedly. I awoke with a start, and there, just staring at me from a chair on one side of the bed, was none other than creepy Hank. I remember being so horrified and disgusted, but then my drugs kicked back in and I was out like a light. I thought maybe it was a nightmare, but nope, Hank actually bragged about staring at me for hours while I was drugged. What in the actual... We also later found out that Hank had said some awful things to my mother-in-law and her husband. Story for another time. While we were still in the hospital, we found out that Hank and Cora were planning on staying at our house for 2 weeks. Didn't even ask, just assumed. John put his foot down and told Hank that absolutely not. We were not at all prepared to host guests, especially not for 2 weeks. Hank then said that they would just bring their RV down and camp in our driveway. Again, John said no, stating we needed our space to acclimate as a new family of 3. After much arguing, instead of just saying okay, they understood our wishes. Hank instead reserved the closest campsite to our house. Still not great, but at least they weren't in my backyard. Hank and Cora would arrive at our house as early as possible each day and then wear out their welcome by staying late into the evening, all while expecting me to wait on them hand and foot. John again told his father to stop, that I needed rest and space to recover. Unfortunately, John had to go back to work within only a day of being home from the hospital, so I was stuck with Hank and Cora for the majority of the time, which of course, Hank still tried ordering me around, telling me I can rest at night, and that moving around to cook and clean up after them was good for you. In my postpartum rage, I finally just screamed at him to shut up and leave my house while sobbing uncontrollably. Not my finest moment. I took my baby and fur babies into my room, slammed the door, and locked it, hoping they would do what I asked and leave. After I calmed down, I came out of my room thinking surely they had gone home. Nope, they sat on my couch watching TV. When he noticed me, Hank said, "Oh, good, you're done with your temper tantrum. Make me some coffee. I'm exhausted." The audacity of this man. I called my sweet hubby right in front of him and told him in a very eerily calm voice to get his butt home before I unalived his father, to which Hank started laughing hysterically until I gave him the look of death. I told my husband what happened, and he told me to give the phone to his father. I still to this day have no idea what he said, but Hank responded by handing me the phone, then telling Cora it was time to leave. They walked out without a word. Unfortunately, they still came back every single day, but silver lining, Hank stopped trying to boss me around like some servant who hadn't just given birth. Fast forward again to 4 years later. Cora had divorced Hank, shocker, I know, a couple of years prior. Well, before the divorce was final, Hank went on a complete dating spree. He is free to live his life, but we also didn't want our son meeting a new grandma every time we visited. Hank is also bragging to everyone we know about what a wonderful grandfather he was, and how he had such an amazing relationship with our son. That could not have been further from the truth. Every time we visited, Hank would act like he didn't have time for his only grandchild by playing games on his phone and texting his various lady friends instead of actually spending time with him. Hank would then get annoyed anytime our sweet boy would ask him to play with him. Hank even started to cop an attitude with him, which is where we finally drew the line and had to come to Jesus moment with him. Definitely went in one ear and out the other because Hank didn't change, only became sneakier with it, talking down to our son behind our backs and blaming his tears on being overtired. Then we met the amazing Dee Dee, Hank's newest pursuit. Dee Dee has a kind and compassionate spirit. She just exudes light and love. Dee Dee made it her mission to bond with our little boy and become the grandmother he always wanted on that side of the family. She would always bring him the most thoughtful gifts after listening to him talk and finding out his favorite things. She would get on the floor with him and play trains for hours. She would buy him board games so that she could teach him how to play together. She would ask us if she could take him to hidden little ice cream spots and let him try as many flavors as he could stand. She truly loves our boy, and the feeling is most definitely mutual. Around the time we had met Dee Dee, I had lost a significant amount of weight, over 160 pounds. I felt great and my body was much healthier. Then we got pregnant with our second child. We were over the moon because we didn't think it would be possible to naturally conceive again. Unfortunately, our sweet little angel wasn't meant to be earthside and passed away at only 10 weeks gestation. We were absolutely shattered. A few months later, my sweet John lost his job. We knew it was fight or flight, so we chose flight and started our business. The same exact day this all went down, we found out we were pregnant again. We remained cautiously optimistic, but doing everything we could in hopes that we could help this little one survive. Appointments went well, my numbers looked amazing, and I was feeling all the first trimester symptoms. I was right at 15 weeks when I woke up to a horrible bloody mess. I prayed that it wasn't what we feared, but deep down we both knew. It was July 3rd, so I knew even if I got an appointment, I wouldn't receive any results until after the 4th of July. I still made an appointment. They weren't able to ultrasound, but drew blood to watch for my numbers. Surprisingly, our numbers came back the morning of the 4th, and I was able to see on my patient portal that my numbers had actually continued to rise. My husband and I were so happy. We thought this was excellent news, even while my bleeding had become so heavy that I was bleeding through the heaviest pads on the market in less than an hour. I felt weak and sick, but I thought that is still my morning sickness, not equating that to the blood loss. July 5th finally comes and I go to my OBGYN super hopeful. Unfortunately, our fears were confirmed yet again as my gestational sac had collapsed and my baby was gone. The next day I had my D&C. We had already planned a trip to Hank's state 2 days later to share what we would have been amazing news. My husband and I are still decided to go so we could get away to the beach, as Hank's family all live on the coast. We even stayed at a hotel so that we could visit but have our own space as well. We had gone to Hank's house to visit with him and Dee Dee. While there, I started to get emotional, though I tried to hide it as I don't like to cry in front of others. Hank looks at me and instead of offering kind and compassionate words, he says, "You just need to get over it and move on." I could have slapped him. Thankfully, John packed up our son and had me to go out the car with him so that he could have a word with his father. Soon after, we went back to our hotel, where we stayed for the remainder of our trip. John's grandfather had late-stage dementia at this point in time. A few months after our trip, we got the news that we had feared. His grandfather had passed away. We made the 14-hour trip back for the funeral and stayed at the same hotel that John's other out-of-town cousins were also staying at. Though it was a sad occasion, it was nice to reconnect with family we hadn't seen in a while. This is where the story gets super wild. One night, we were all hanging out at the pool and hot tub, the kids all playing and having a great time. John's cousin, Eileen, and Aunt Ruth were with us warming up in the hot tub when Eileen asked, "John, how is it that you still have such a close relationship to your mom and stepdad after what they did?" Completely perplexed, John asked what she meant by that. "Oh, well, you know, what they did." "No, Eileen, I really don't. What are you talking about?" Eileen and Aunt Ruth exchange looks and Aunt Ruth gently says, "You know, when you walked in on your mom and now stepdad having an affair while she was still married to your father?" Dead silence. "Excuse me, what?" "Your mom was in bed with your stepdad and you walked in on them in the middle of the act." John looked absolutely dumbfounded. "I never walked in on my mom cheating on my dad." "Are you sure you aren't in denial? Your dad told us not to ever bring it up around you so that we don't undo the years of therapy you've had to undergo due to the trauma of that situation." "What?" A few more of his cousins approached to see what was going on. Henry, the closest thing to a brother John has, confirmed what Eileen and Aunt Ruth had said to be the exact story he and his siblings had heard as well. John is absolutely livid at this point. "How could I possibly walk in on my mother having an affair with my stepfather when I was the one to introduce them at a party at my house almost 2 years after their divorce?" Absolutely stunned silence. "John, are you sure? Your dad says that your stepdad was his best friend before all that went down." John is absolutely seething at this point. His best friend? My dad never met Gary, stepdad, until my sister's college graduation, years after both had remarried. "So you didn't go to therapy?" "I went to therapy because my dad abandoned me and my sister to be with another woman not 2 weeks after my mom and him separated. It had nothing to do with any actions on my mom's part, who didn't abandon me, by the way." We were all stunned. It all finally made sense. The extreme hate Haley received from Hank's side of the family, the request to not be near them at family events, the nastiness at Grandma Lily's voice every time John's mother's name was mentioned. Hank had been lying for over 2 decades. Then we started finding out about a ton of other lies. John wanted to confront Hank, but knew that the funeral of Hank's father was not at all the time and place. So he let it go. Haley was absolutely devastated when we told what Hank had said about her. He had single-handedly destroyed her reputation with people she had considered family for over 25 years. We went back to visit again a few months later, and many more family members approached us asking if it was true, if John never actually caught Haley cheating on Hank, to which of course we told them the truth. Even Dee Dee approached me, and I told her the truth as well. John still didn't really know how to confront Hank, and their once close relationship started to become very strained. 2 weeks after we had left, Dee Dee called me to tell me that Hank had broken things off with her, and that he had been seeing another woman behind her back for almost 6 months. Hank told her that he was head over heels in love with this other woman, and he didn't have any romantic feelings left for Dee Dee. That was the last straw. Hank accused Haley of cheating, but it seems he has been the unfaithful one the entire time. Not even 2 weeks later, Hank calls John to tell him about this new woman and that they were engaged. Hank said that he couldn't wait for our son to meet her, but John stopped him and said absolutely not. He was putting his foot down and not allowing our son to be hurt by his grandfather. Our son is on the spectrum, so when he gets attached to someone, it is extremely hard to break that attachment. What about Dee Dee? What will I tell our son about his grandma that he loves so very much? He'll be fine. He has probably already forgotten about her. Dad, we saw you and Dee Dee less than a month ago. No, he isn't going to forget. Well, his feelings aren't important in this. Clearly. This new woman is my soulmate. We were meant to be. He's going to have to get over it. Only a couple of days later, I was extremely nauseous. I realized I was about a week late, but I was so scared to take a test. I worked up the courage and finally peed on that stick. Not even 60 seconds and I got a positive. I took 3 more, all with the same result. John and I had decided to keep this one to ourselves for as long as we could to protect our own hearts. We tried not to get excited. We couldn't bear to lose another precious angel. My doctor saw me immediately and then put me on progesterone in hopes to finally have our sweet little bundle. At the 20-week mark, we finally felt safe enough to tell our family and closest friends. Hank responded with, "Well, maybe you can actually keep this one this time and not lose it like the others." As we entered the 3rd trimester, our OB gave us some troubling news. Our sweet baby girl was not thriving and only in the 2nd percentile. If we didn't do something quick, we could lose her. I started getting IVs of nutrients for the baby while simultaneously drinking as many protein shakes a day as I could possibly stomach. I did everything I could to add calories in hopes that my little girl would be okay. Our birthing center had asked that for the safety of our tiny girl that we limit our guests to only in-state, local family members. Of course, we agreed, the health of our child being the most important thing. Hank, obviously only thinking of himself, was livid. He even had his mother, Grandma Lily, call me to give me, while insanely pregnant, the biggest guilt trip, going on and on about how unfair it was that my parents along with Haley and Gary were allowed, but Hank wasn't, even though he is the grandfather. I explained the health concern, to which she replied, "Well, my son is far more healthy and clean than that nasty mother-in-law of yours. He has every right to be there." I calmly disagreed and explained that our baby comes first. She then says, "That's fine, but don't be surprised when you come home and his RV is parked in your driveway. He told me he will be there for a month this time, just so he can help you get adjusted. Isn't that wonderful?" I was dumbfounded yet again, and in my super pregnant state firmly told her that he would not be welcome, and in fact, he wasn't allowed to visit for the first 8 weeks to give her time for vaccinations and to build her immune system. I also informed her that John and I would have absolutely no problem calling the police and having him forcibly removed from our property because we were that serious about our daughter's health. She huffed, then got off the phone very quickly so that she could call Hank, who happened to be with his brother, Bo. Bo then proceeds to text John, basically telling him what an uneducated idiot he is because he went to school in the South. Both of our states are considered Southern, and that he will always be a failure, and that he couldn't wait for our family business to fail and for our family to be homeless. During this time, Hank was also texting John, tag-teaming the bullying with his brother. John had enough and blocked them both, along with Grandma Lily. He asked that I do the same, which I gladly obliged. We gave birth to our tiny full-term rainbow baby girl. While she has had some breathing issues that she is actively being treated for, she is otherwise healthy and thriving. John has yet to unblock his father and uncle, though he has since unblocked Grandma Lily, keeping her just at arm's length. John has absolutely no intention of having a relationship with Hank again, let alone our children, unless Hank were to apologize, not only to us, but to his family, and especially to Haley and Gary, and also coming clean about Haley never actually cheating on him. Obviously, a narcissist never thinks they are in the wrong, so I honestly don't think that will ever happen. Hank has only attempted to call twice, which John can see on his phone when blocked calls come through, and can also still receive voicemails from said blocked calls. Hank left a super nasty voicemail threatening John to call or else, and demanding to see his granddaughter because it is his right. John has yet to respond and doesn't think he ever will. Oh, and the cherry on top? We just found out from other family members that Hank and fiancé have decided to go their separate ways, and Hank has found another soulmate. So sorry for the long novel of a post. Are we the a-hole for exposing my father-in-law for the liar that he is, for not allowing him to meet our daughter, and also refusing him to have any sort of relationship with our son for fear that he will hurt him the way he hurt John? Ask the question, the community has some thoughts. First up, he is a terrible person, and I'm glad your husband stood up to him. I'm curious if you are keeping in touch with Dee Dee and allowing her to see your son. The OP replies, yes, Dee Dee is actually still very involved in our son's life. She does live about 15 hours away, but she is actually going to get to see our boy and meet our daughter the week of Thanksgiving. She is such an incredible woman and has been a solid rock to help us through all of this. Dee Dee will always be my son's grandmother. Chosen family is definitely way better than blood. Another commenter says, of course, not the a-hole. It's not like John knew there was a secret being kept, a lie being told, and the lie was about him, to make Hank look good at the expense of Haley. Again, of course not the a-hole. I'm amazed you need to ask. And I think it is definitely best for your son to be protected from negative influences, at least until he's old enough to understand things and to be able to think for himself. I hope Dee Dee is still in the boy's life. There is no need to exclude her just because she isn't marrying his grandfather anymore. She can still be his dear friend or cool older aunt. I hope Hank becomes a better person later on. The OP replies, the reason why I honestly asked is because we actually have family members telling us we are in the wrong because they too feel he has a right to meet his granddaughter. It blows my mind how they could possibly think that, but it also made me second guess that maybe I was the one thinking wrongly. But thank you. You and everyone else are definitely making me feel validated in our decisions. And yes, Dee Dee will always be our chosen grandmother for our boy and little girl. Hank is like if someone took every terrible trait you could imagine, shook them up in a blender, and then poured it into one human being. Narcissist? Check. Racist? Check. Creepy as hell? Check. Entitled to your house, your coffee, and your sanity? Double check. And somehow, people are telling you that you're in the wrong for keeping him away from your kids? Please. Honestly, it sounds like you guys picked the right grandma with Dee Dee. She's basically the human version of a warm hug compared to whatever Hank is. Some people are just born to ruin family gatherings, and Hank is that person. Full stop. What would you do if you were in this situation? Let us know your thoughts below. And thank you for joining us today in the rLounge. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. Until next time. And please put your chair back where you found it.